The picture.
So what are you doing?
The little
You're scraping hide?
Yes, sir. Scraping deer hide. Removing the hair, but more importantly, we got to re-scrape this to remove the outer layer of skin, the epidermal layer.
Yes.
So even though we remove the hair, we have to remove this outer layer of skin.
Now that's the white stuff, or is
It's the protein.
The way you tell whether you've removed enough is the hair follicles normally go through the epidermal layer. They do not go into the center or dermal layer, which is what we're using. That's the fibrous center network. So even though this looks like it's scraped because we removed the hair, we've got to scrape a lot more.
Yes.
So we scrape the whole hide. This is really scraping good today.
Just about any.
You can see it looks like a big job, but it really doesn't take. Once you get going, you can get
more strokes off here.
We'll have to go over this whole thing.
To give you
And that tool, what's the end of that tool look like?
This is called a hide scraper, and you can make one out of flint if you want, using like either a wooden stick or possibly a bone from like a deer or an elk or something. But the problem with the flint nap ones, and I've used them, they do work. But the flint nap ones, they're a unifacial bit, and they've got little flake scars all along when you nap one out of flint, and that tends to put little miniature cuts. It works, but you have to be more careful using it, and you have to sharpen it more frequently. It takes longer to use it. I did one hide using primitive tools, and it took me about 3 times longer to do it, but it came out good.
Yes.
So it just depends on
how much time you want to put in.
But this is just part of the process. After we get all the hair and all the epidermal layers scraped off, we'll scrape the inside very quickly and very briefly. The inside won't keep it from softening, but the outside, the hair and the epidermal layer, if we don't get that thoroughly off, it'll keep it from softening when we go to break it. He's got a bucket of brains over there. He's got brains in water, which he's warming up now.
Yes.
And we're going to put this, when we get done with this, it'll look like this when it comes out of the frame.
Yes, sir.
And then we'll stuff it into that bucket of brains over there, and we'll wring it over that wringing pole, forcing the fluid through the hide. It's not a matter of soaking, it's a matter of forcing that oil through the hide, and you'll see it bubble through here when it's, and you'll wring it. And usually we do that 2 or 3 times. It depends on the thickness of the hide. And then we'll continue to work the hide as it's drying. And when we get done with that, it comes out looking like this. So, and then the last step in the process is we actually smoke this using something like he's got over there.
Yes.
We get a lot of rotten wood that's very damp.
Yes.
We don't want heat, but we want the moist smoke.
That gives you the different colors from the woods and stuff.
The smoking process is actually part of the tanning process.
Okay.
This hide, if it gets wet, will dry stiff and hard again, unless you continue to work it as it's drying. Once we smoke a hide, if it gets wet, all you have to do is just give it a couple of real quick pulls and it'll soften right up. So the smoke somehow lubricates these fibers to keep them from locking back together.
Yes.
So, this is smoked and it's been wet a million times. And the one thing about the hides is, of course, when you lay them out for a garment, they stretch girthwise. They don't stretch. A deer hide doesn't stretch lengthwise. That way, in the fall, when he can eat acorns and stuff, he can eat all he wants and fill up. And so when you lay out your clothes, you want to take that into consideration. You say, oh, well, you wouldn't make moccasins. This is a thin hide. But if it was a thick hide, you say, oh, I can get 3 sets of moccasins out of it. No, by the time you lay them out so that they stretch around your foot, you may only get 1 pair out of here and then have some left over. So you do have to consider that when you lay out, and that's with any deer hide. It doesn't have to be brain thin. They stretch, and you can tell, even if you couldn't tell, stretches dramatically this way, and very little head to toe.
Can I try scraping?
I would love it. I need all the help I can
Will I
get.
get you the video to kind of lay this right
If
here?
you'll show me how to operate it. Do you know how to operate it?
Well, just hold it up there like that, and it's videotaping right now.
Okay, I can just leave it run?
Yes, sir.
I can do that.
All right.
But let me show you a couple things on the scraping.
Yes, sir.
Don't hack. We're not cutting wood.
Yes, sir.
So you want to place it on there, and you can feel when it's cut.
Yes.
If it rides up over the hair, it won't cut anymore.
Okay.
Start again. There's
sir.
a lot of sand in this hair because it's a Florida deer.
Okay.
And if you ride this thing over the hair more than necessary, you'll dull the edge real quick because of the
Okay.
sand in there.
Yes, sir.
And you can go back. Areas like this is very thick, so we know we can scrape this vigorously. Areas like here, very thin, don't scrape it much.
Yes.
Just do a very light scraping.
Okay.
Give it a try and see. I'll hold it. Got it.
It goes very, very thin.
There, and keep the handle either parallel or even in further, because the bit is designed to work at that angle. It's a unifacial bit, and the angle on the bit is designed to operate at you can kind of feel, you can kind of hear it and feel when it's actually working. And you're doing great. Perfect. It doesn't require, you can kind of put a lot of pressure in the area around the neck and the middle of the back because the hide is very thick in those areas and we have to scrape them.
You don't soak in lye?
No, we don't do lye at all. Lye is mainly for slipping the hair out. We scrape the hair off using this method here.
It's a lot quicker.
I've used both, and I prefer the dry scrape.
Really?
Both methods work. They're both accomplishing the same thing. They're removing the
You use brain
epidermal.
tanning, right?
Pardon?
You use brain tanning.
You can brain tan after you. It's called wet scrape. You soak it in. You soak it in hydrated lime, preferably
Well, all lime is well, not lime.
alkaline. Yeah,
Lye is just
alkaline.
hardwood ash, potassium,
That's
and water.
true. That's true. But it removes the hair. The hair falls out, but you also have to scrape over a fleshing beam like that.
right.
And what the wood ash does is swell up the outer
Epidemics.
epidermal layer, exactly, and you actually push it off on a fleshing beam. Well,
I
here,
used to do it when I was younger. but
right, same thing we're doing here. It's just a different way of accomplishing the same thing. From the time that it's scraped to the time that we finish it, it's done the same. In other words, once it's scraped, no matter which way you use, wet or dry scrape, the tanning process is the same.
And what's the best way to get soft leather?
We use brain tan, and you know
do that.
that's there's all
The
kinds.
best way is have a squaw chew the hide. That's the best way. That's native. That's traditional. They don't mention that too often. But that's why most of the native Indian women lost their teeth early.
That I don't. So what you're doing here, the reason you're getting this,
Yes, sir.
and you want to be careful of this because if you can come at this the side to correct it if you want, it'll catch there continuously and you'll end up with a big divot in there and you'll go through. The reason that's happening is because you're pulling out the handle at the bottom of the stroke, which is normal. So I'm going to let you fix this. So come at it from the side, kind of lightly and carefully until you get
This
it.
here?
Yep, just you can do it, just something like this.
Okay.
You'll see here,
You know, until you remove, you see, you know what I'm saying? You got a couple more here. If you don't correct those, they'll magnify. You know what I'm saying? And how that, keep the handle in closer. There you go. And you can push a little harder. If you're going sideways like that, all you're doing is removing those little divots that you put in there, and then you can go back and scrape normally like you were doing. But try to maintain the handle either parallel to the hide or in closer to the hide. But it's natural. Your natural flow is to pull out at the bottom of your stroke, and that's something you need to. Okay, now go back to the other way and see if you've corrected your. There you go. And you'll be able to feel them if they're there. If they're there, just go back and scrape a little bit to the side. Normally we don't scrape a hide side to side, but when we've got a little divot like that, we like to correct it. Now these little bitty things here, they're not going to hurt you. It's the big ones that you want to be concerned because they tend to magnify themselves. But certain areas of the hide are very thick. The neck is very thick. And the rump in this area is very thick. And here, when he runs through the woods, a lot of times you'll see scrapes from barbed wire or whatever. You know, these are thicker so that they protect him. His belly is thin. His armpits are very thin. You know, so there's thick and thin so each hide is the same in some ways.
Yes, sir.
But then again, each hide is different because there might be injuries or a hide will be thicker on a. The older deer tend to be thicker than the younger deer,
Yes.
and the bucks tend to be thicker than the does. And